obsession, passion, undying love, genius and madness. Take the titanic themes and emotions of grand opera, fuse them with the trappings of the Gothic novel, and what do you get? The Phantom of the Opera, of course, a darkly romantic icon of the Gaslight era. The opera ghost has never been so popular as he is today. The Phantom seems to have a special appeal for modern audiences, beckoning us to leave our brightly lit, digitized world for a shadowy realm of mystery and terror and enchantment. I've reserved special seats in box 5, but I warn you, it's supposed to be haunted. But at least it's not underneath the chandelier.
Opera is often regarded as the highest combined achievement of the arts. Music, movement, and visual grace all elevated to a nearly superhuman plane. But within this celestial realm, there dwells a fallen angel.
It's a fairy tale. There's an angel, and then there's evil.
Who or what is the Phantom of the Opera? What does he want?
Mademoiselle, soon his spirit will take form and command your love.
All over black. And his eye staring at me.
His eye?
Eye. One eye in the middle of his forehead.
He has a long nose and a big red beard. You make me nervous.
And his nose, there is no nose.
No, he really has no nose.
And how far will he go in pursuit of his passion? If one theme recurs in the canon of Universal Studios horror, it is certainly the timeless legend of Beauty and the Beast. But nowhere has the classic fairy tale been more masterfully elaborated upon than in Universal's The Phantom of the Opera, first made in 1925 with Lon Chaney, and remade once again in 1962 with Herbert Lom as the disfigured music master, whose story has become one of the most popular romantic narratives of the 20th century.
The thing about The Phantom of the Opera is the romantic quality that it has.
Well, the appeal certainly of The Phantom of the Opera is one of those perennial things where you have a character who also has a tragic element.
It's so intriguing and mysterious, the mystery of it all. It fascinates people.
I think the thing that sticks in everybody's mind is the removal of the mask.
Take off that ridiculous mask when you speak to me. Do you hear me? Take it off!
The Opera Ghost was the creation of a Frenchman, Gaston Leroux. Lawyer, journalist, author of many fantastic novels, but none so enduring as The Phantom of the Opera. First published in 1910, Phantom became a popular success. It told the story of Eric, a horribly disfigured musician who dwells in the catacombs beneath the Paris Opera House, and his unrequited love for a singer named Christine. When his passion is thwarted, a reign of terror ensues. A primary inspiration for Leroux's book was an earlier novel, George du Maurier's Trilby. It told the story of Svengali, a maestro of mesmerism, who possesses the soul and voice of a beautiful young singer. Carl Laemmle, president of Universal Pictures, bought the film rights to Phantom for actor Lon Chaney to follow Chaney's phenomenal success in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
It had all of the elements and the ingredients for a rip-roaring melodrama. And of course, the main thing is, it was a perfect vehicle for Lon Chaney as a follow-up to The Hunchback.
Lon Chaney was one of the finest character actors, and he was notable mainly because he was such a great artist at makeup He called him the man of 1,000 faces.
His range was incredible, and of course he was perfect for silent movies because he could express in pantomime so much without having to speak.
Like Hunchback, Phantom would be a tremendous undertaking for a small company like Universal.
There was a great emphasis on westerns, on comedies, on things that rural audiences would like.
Laemmle first intended to shoot on location in France, but he finally brought Paris to Hollywood, and the opera rose up at Universal City in the shadow of Notre Dame.
It was a very elaborate, very expensive production, and the stage was an exact replica of the Paris Opera House.
The set for the Opera House was actually newly constructed for the 1925 version, and it was one of the first, if not the first, steel structure sets built on the Universal lot. And it was quite a deal at that time. And because it was such an incredible set, they were able to use it time after time for many productions, including the 1943 production.
The Phantom stage, art directed by E.E. Sheely and Sidney Ullman, perfectly duplicated the Paris original. But no one at Universal knew what the backstage and cellars looked like. Ben Carré, a French artist now in Hollywood, had worked at the Paris Opera and was called in to help. His English unintelligible, Carré spoke fluently with charcoal. A grateful Universal thanked him, and Carré moved on to his next assignment. Nearly half a century would pass before Carré would actually see the film and learn how carefully his designs had been executed. Such an exquisitely designed production required an especially attractive leading lady. The coveted role of Christine went to a relatively unknown ingenue named Mary Philbin.
Mary Philbin and I were neighbors in Chicago. She was 6 years older than I, but a beautiful, beautiful girl, just exquisitely beautiful. And at the time, Universal was having a beauty contest, and my father urged her to send a picture, and she did, and she won a contract. Mary was not of this world, really, not of this age. She was extremely shy. She was a lovely, sweet, gentle human being.
Lon Chaney's screen persona was the complete antithesis of Mary's, the beast to her beauty. And although Chaney was unparalleled as a master of grotesque makeup, Phantom would put even his talent to the test.
The concept of the death mask comes from the book. So this is Christine describing to Raoul. Suddenly, I felt a need to see beneath the mask. I wanted to know the face of the voice. And with a movement which I was utterly unable to control, swiftly my fingers tore away the mask. If I lived to be 100, I should always hear the superhuman cry of grief and rage which he uttered when the terrible sight appeared before my eyes. I fell back against the wall, and he came up to me, grinding his teeth. And as I fell upon my knees, he hissed mad, incoherent words. Leaning over me, he cried, "Look, you want to see? Feast your eyes, glut your soul on my cursed ugliness."
To create the illusion of a living skull, Chaney had taken inspiration from a book illustration by André Castaigne, which only partially revealed the Phantom's face. An exaggerated skull cap raised his forehead, and his cheekbones were exaggerated with putty. Further distortion was achieved by wadding, inserted into either side of his mouth. Small prongs attached to a set of decaying teeth created the perpetual grin of a death's head and held the mouth open. The makeup's most startling feature, a skeletal nose, was intensified for close-up shots by means of a wire appliance, partially visible in these photos, inserted into his nostrils, then pulled, taut, and hidden by putty. According to cameraman Charles Van Anger, the device often caused significant bleeding.
Well, it was pretty ghastly, and when he was unmasked, so to speak, it was a real shock.
For Carl Laemmle's niece, Carla, who lived with her parents on the backlot, life at Universal was never more exciting than during the production of Phantom.
And when I was 16 years old, they were making the Phantom of the Opera, and I was chosen to be the prima ballerina which was quite a big thrill to me.
Phantom's director, Rupert Julian, was also thrilled. After 10 routine years as an actor and director with Universal, the former Percival T. Hayes, son of a New Zealand pub owner, had landed in clover. Having replaced Erich von Stroheim on Merry Go Round, which had also starred Mary Philbin and Phantom leading man Norman Carey, Julian was now the studio's star director, dignified, sartorial. With an impeccable waxed mustache, he was very, very strict, and also very mediocre. Almost immediately, Rupert alienated crew and cast alike. Phantom cameraman Charles Van Enger personally recounted the details to film historian Rudy Belmer in 1962.
The eyes went heavenward, and he said that Rupert Julian and Lon Chaney, after the film had started production, did not get along at all. And in fact, it got to a point where Mr. Van Enger was the kind of go-between, and that the two of them didn't speak.
With Van Enger the messenger boy, Chaney sent word to tell Rupert to go to hell. Van Enger cautioned Julian to beware lest an arc lamp accidentally drop from the rafters. Norman Carey, on horseback one day, became so angry at Julian that he charged the director's platform, riding down the cameras. Julian's wife, Elsie Jane Wilson, punctured his pomposity constantly, endearing her to the crew and smoothing production considerably. If the behind-the-scenes battles were colorful, so was the film itself. The new two-color Technicolor process was used for scenes of spectacle and pageantry. With over $500,000 spent and the New York opening set for February 1925, a January preview was a disaster. Laemmle fired his general manager. Rupert Julian walked out. Director Edward Sedgwick, a Western specialist, reshot 60% of the film. Action and comedy would save the day. Norman Carey now had Ward Crane as a Russian count to duel with for Mary Philbin's affections, and comedian Chester Conklin to duel wits with. In April, San Francisco got an eyeful. Gales of laughter greeted the movie. The story drags to the point of nausea, said one critic. The picture was pulled. Laemmle fired the new general manager and entrusted Phantom's salvation to a woman, director Lois Weber. She supervised the cut and paste of all Phantom footage. In the preview version, Eric's soul had been redeemed by Christine's kiss, and he died literally of a broken heart. Western director Sedgwick had preferred frontier justice. Lois Weber cut to the chase. The Phantom of the Opera finally opened in September. Final cost, $632,000. It was a sensation, grossing more than $2 million. It was one of the last hurrahs of the silent cinema. Then in 1927, everything changed. Movies had found their voice.
Universal was so delighted with the reception of The Phantom of the Opera that they naturally, when sound came in, one of the thoughts was, let's do it again with sound.
The return of the Phantom was announced. All talking, all singing, all Technicolor, but no Chaney. The man of 1,000 faces resisted becoming the man of 1,000 voices. When Lon Chaney did speak, it would be for Louis B. Mayer, not Carl Laemmle. Universal's Talking Phantom required some technical sleight of hand. Universal retrofit the original Phantom in sound. Prohibited by contract from dubbing Chaney's voice, Universal simply wrote his dialogue in the third person, as if delivered by an emissary, and looped it only over shots of his shadow, avoiding mouth synchronization.
Don't be afraid. No harm shall come to you, Christine. The master is waiting. Walk to the mirror. Have no fear.
40% of the film was reshot in synchronous sound. Trade papers called the results breath-talking. But the microphone rang down the curtain on the careers of both Mary Philbin and Norman Carey.
You know, I wonder what prompted them to give you this chance.
Why, my voice, naturally.
The new opera inserts were weekly staged by director Ernst Lemley, filmed by locked-off cameras.
She's singing, it brings down the chandelier.
The Technicolor sequence made a return engagement. And so did Lon Chaney, even if his lips were contractually sealed. Remade and reborn at an additional cost of $113,000, the new Phantom of the Opera grossed $419,000 worldwide. Welcome money indeed for Universal in the first year of the Great Depression. The Phantom of the Opera in sound opened January 4th, 1930. 3 weeks later, Lon Chaney signed with MGM for his first and only talkie, The Unholy Three. But 6 months later, the man of 1,000 faces was dead. The silent cinema died with him. Universal soon established itself as Hollywood's leading house of talking horror.
I am Dracula.
At the height of the horror boom in 1935, Universal announced a remake of The Phantom of the Opera to be produced on a grand scale. But overextended financially, the Lemleys lost the studio. The new Universal management forged ahead, promising its own ambitious Phantom. Martha Eggerth, the Hungarian Nightingale, was announced as Christine and Cesar Romero as Raoul. Psychologically wounded in World War I, the new Phantom was a shell-shocked music master in contemporary Paris, whose mental derangement made him imagine his disfigurement. Would he be played by Karloff the Uncanny, or the great opera star Fyodor Shalyapin? 1936 economy measures at the new Universal, coupled with the British embargo on horror films, banished this Phantom. 20th Century Fox seized the moment and cast Boris Karloff as a masked Mephisto in Charlie Chan at the Opera. But like all good Universal monsters, the Phantom was only resting, waiting for new life to come. By 1939, a son was born to the House of Frankenstein, along with a daughter, teenage songbird Deanna Durbin, whose box office appeal was also of monstrous proportions.
She was the star of the studio. The studio had recovered, from going down financially because of Deanna's first picture, Three Smart Girls.
In 1941, the Phantom was to be reborn, remade, rejuvenated once again, even if he must play second fiddle to Deanna. Charles Laughton, acclaimed for his portrayal of Quasimodo in the 1939 remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, had just played Durbin's surrogate father in It Started with Eve for director Henry Koster. Why not, thought Koster, reunite them and make Eric and Christine father and daughter? Koster told the press that his Technicolor movie would present the backstage opera in tones of gray and brown, and then the splash of bright red blood. Durbin saw red too and rejected the script. As 1941 ended, Universal's family included the immensely popular comedy team of Abbott and Costello. Their director, Arthur Lubin, moved to the A roster. No stranger to horror, Lubin could scare up a phantom on time and on budget. And his producer, George Wagner, knew something about horror, having produced The Wolfman and other chillers.
Mr. Wagner was a complex man. He was a cowboy, basically. Big, impressive person with steely blue-gray eyes, and with a lot of love of music and things inside him. And it was a great opportunity for him to do Phantom.
He loved music. Like most of the producers at Universal somehow had something to do with music. Either it was their hobby, or it had been their profession, or it still was their profession.
Wagner also knew about the son of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney Jr., who lobbied to reprise his father's greatest role. Chaney was never seriously considered, but the equally unlikely contract player Broderick Crawford was. Suggestions that budget Bobby Soxer Grace McDonald portray Christine were quickly gagged. Phantom was now $1 million movie, needing $1 million star. Universal's Invisible Man, Claude Rains, was between contracts at Warner Brothers. In Hollywood, Rains always projected urbane sophistication, but it was an image hard-earned.
I am always in awe of how terribly elegant he was. He was one of 12 children. All but 2 died from poverty-related illnesses in London. This was not an elegant upbringing. He had a very strong Cockney accent, which I couldn't understand when he spoke with it. He also had a couple of speech impediments. He couldn't say R's. His name was William Rains, so he called himself Willie Wains. He really transformed himself over a long period of time into somebody else, and that was the person that I knew.
Rains accepted the role of the Phantom with one special provision. He refused to wear an elaborate makeup. He dreaded being typecast in fright films and had previously turned down the Basil Rathbone part in Son of Frankenstein. The opera, of course, always has its prima donna. When it came to Universal Monsters, there was only one contender for the title.
The great Jack Pierce, the dictator of all dictators. Nobody was ever late at Jack Pierce's office. You never dared to be 5 minutes late when he said, be there at 7:30 or sometimes 5:30 in the morning. You had to be there. I was late once at Jack Pierce's office, the first and the last time. I never did it again.
Pierce's authority was never challenged for a simple reason.
Jack Pierce was a marvelous makeup man and the best in the business.
Pierce had to keep simplifying the Phantom's face of fire until it met with Rains' approval. Sensitivity to returning combat veterans, many of them disfigured, also caused the producers to tread carefully. As late as December 1942, Universal's junior songbird Gloria Jean seemed to have the part. But when pre-recording started before Christmas, the role of Christine was being played by Susanna Foster, a 17-year-old singing prodigy from the Midwest. Susanna had grown up in awe of Hollywood singer Jeanette MacDonald. She rivaled her idol in beauty and star presence.
Christine, you're going to be a great and famous singer.
The kind of a star Susie Foster is somebody that you feel is absolutely sincere in what she does. I could not stand these seas above the high seas. It was a pain in the ear for me, but it was a great piece of art. It made her famous, and she was, I think, the only one who could do it.
5 years in Hollywood without a starring role, it was a dream come true when she was selected to play Christine opposite Jeanette MacDonald's co-star, baritone Nelson Eddy. Nelson was thrilled about the prospect, until Arthur Lubin told him he would have to dye his blonde hair. He accepted the role only when Jack Pierce developed a special black hair dye that would wash out each night.
Think we can get through this crowd?
Certainly. After all, who'd pay any attention to a baritone and a detective?
You saw what Arthur Lubin could do. In this very dramatic picture, he combined a comedy interest between the two leading men, between Nelson Eddy and Edgar Barrier. And those little scenes that he did where he was injecting comedy made a great...
Lubin had the challenge of his first Technicolor production.
The Technicolor process, as it was, the three-strip process in those days, involved a special camera which had 3 strips of film in register, 2 in bipack and 1 at right angles, and a beam splitter, so that what you had, you were recording each of the primary colors.
That you used a tremendous amount of light to be able to really get a good exposure on these 3 films that ran through the camera. The lighting, it was very hot on the set, and we had to wear heavy makeup.
You have a Technicolor advisor. You have the Technicolor Natalie Kalmus, who came with the package, and she was advising on color, lighting, on fabrics, on sets, and she was generally regarded as a bit of a pain.
Natalie Kalmus was the head of the company, and was always, every day she was on the set.
The directors of photography were W. Howard Green of Technicolor and Oscar winner Hal Moore, familiar with the Phantom stage since the late silent days.
Working with Hal Moore was an experience because he was with you when he was behind the camera. He was one of the great, maybe the greatest cameraman at that time.
The incredibly mobile Broadway crane, which Moore had co-developed, provided remarkable views of the auditorium.
Well, the color was so beautiful, the actors were good, and the wonderful camera work, and the Golitsyn design. He's a great painter.
Art director Alexander Golitsyn redressed the Opera House for Technicolor. Wartime restrictions on studio construction required ingenious use of existing sets.
And the music's important. It was important in his book. The music's very important. Eddie was such a simple man. He was an alcoholic. He had a bag of music, bag of melodies that he carried around with him, something for every occasion. Eddie would come in and his hands would shake when he conducted. By God, the music was there.
Because of World War II, it was very difficult to get copyright and performing rights clearances on some of the great operatic works. So they decided, with the exception of Martha by von Flotow, that's why we have Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony.
In the story, the Phantom's masterwork has been composed around a French lullaby that seems curiously more Gaelic than Gallic.
It's a beautiful tune, but I always think of the Kerry dance, that Irish, traditional Irish.
In its spectacle, color, thrills, music, and dramatic intensity, Phantom of the Opera was a popular entertainment for wartime audiences, the equivalent of any legitimate opera of the Gaslight era. An echo from the past, the original Raoul, Norman Carey, visited the set. He seemed pleased to meet his modern counterpart, but it is likely that he had not forgotten the bitter agonies of 1925. Free of the anxieties that had accompanied the silent film, this Phantom was a model of efficient production.
All these people at Universal at that time, it was a family. We knew each other when we came to the set. It was as if we had spent the night together, as if we had lived together in the same house.
There was one family tie that retained a slight kink, the relationship between Christine Dubois and Eric Claudin. This Phantom is a tragic violinist, crippled by arthritis and dismissed from the orchestra.
It's no use, Maestro. Something has happened to the fingers of my left hand.
A sneak preview went badly. Then, the first night audience in Chicago howled with laughter. Had the Phantom jinx struck again? Universal management prayed. Their prayers were answered, just as Carl Laemmle's had been in 1925. Phantom of the Opera was an immediate smash, breaking records around the country. Box office receipts poured in.
The most they'd ever made, even any Durban film, had never made the money that Phantom made.
Phantom went on to win 2 Academy Awards for color cinematography and art direction. For audiences who didn't see the picture in theaters, Basil Rathbone played the Phantom, with Susanna Foster and Nelson Eddy in a ghost-to-ghost broadcast on the Lux Radio Theater.
Take off the mask or I'll take it off for you!
Why did you do it? Now you see my face.
The only real story that I have about the Phantom of the Opera is that when I was about 6 or 7, one Halloween, he called Universal and he borrowed the cape and the hat. And 2 of my friends and I dressed as goblins and hid under this cape. He would knock on the door and there he was standing there doing this insane Halloween poem, and then he would open up his cape and we would jump out and say, "Trick or treat, trick or treat."
4 days after Phantom's opening, Universal announced The Climax, a direct sequel reuniting cast and creative team. Nelson Eddy was enthusiastic about the proposed sequel, but when production neared, he was not available. Claude Rains had forsworn The Mask and signed a new contract with Warner Brothers. Finally reworked as a follow-up rather than sequel, The Climax starred Boris Karloff as a demented theater physician worshiping the embalmed corpse of his murdered wife while menacing Susanna Foster,
I've come to help you, my dear.
whose voice bears an uncanny resemblance to that of the deceased diva.
Tonight you give your voice and your will to me. I'm in control.
The Climax originally was an old show from New York in the 20s that had one horrible song in it.
While not horrible, the songs in the movie The Climax were more operetta than opera.
When Madame is getting ready for the heavenly impression.
It had all the ingredients for success, including a solid cast.
In The Climax, I played a young Viennese boy called Franz, who was a musician in love with Susie Foster, who realizes what an evil influence that Boris Karloff character had on this girl.
By 1944, Boris Karloff had become such an indelible horror icon that his simple presence in a film signified shudders.
Boris Karloff, the classic horror actor. He did very little with his voice. He did very little with his face. He just let it be there. And the eyes are so expressive. I don't know whether you remember the close-ups of Boris Karloff in The Climax. They were masterpieces. I think it was the first time that Boris had a chance to play an elegant man. And when he came dressed in his tails and his wonderful hat, he was beautiful.
Once again, audiences were treated to the Phantom stage and Hal Moore's Technicolor camera work. But Universal's hope to repeat Phantom's success went up in flames.
Climax didn't have the name Phantom of the Opera. With that name alone, you were safe.
The Climax proved more of an anti-climax at the box office. Following World War II, the Phantom lurked quietly at Universal, unmasked again for a cameo in William Castle's 1951 Hollywood Story. In 1955, another Phantom script was prepared, again set in the Gaslight era. But the new face of fear at Universal International was the creature from the Black Lagoon and other modern horrors of the fabulous 50s. Lon Chaney now was the stuff of old-fashioned melodrama, which the film story of his life became.
Damn you! Damn you! Damn you!
Man of a Thousand Faces was a sanitized retelling of Chaney's own Hollywood story.
They love him, don't they?
The authorized version of a very private life, which some felt dropped the curtain on the true backstage drama. The son of deaf mutes, Lon Chaney was sensitively portrayed by James Cagney. The film explained Chaney's craft and fame, but weak facsimiles of Chaney's triumphs failed to convey his power of accomplishment. Even Eric's organ requiem sounded contrived, having been ad-libbed by staff composer Herman Stein, asked to strike some chords for what he was told was only a sound check. Chaney's soul remained a private mystery.
Do you have to pray like that?
I wouldn't know how to mean it any other way.
Cut!
Even a bargain basement unmasking generated excitement and inspired a new Phantom. The never-produced 1957 script confronted the ghosts of World War II. The Phantom, a dancer named Carlo Volpirno, scarred by Mussolini's fascists. The spirit of Lon Chaney lived on at Universal.
There's a great new joke going around school. Don't step on that spider. It might be Lon Chaney.
Very funny.
In the 1950s, you couldn't step on that spider. It stepped on you. It seemed as if the Phantom would never be remade. And then...
They're going to reopen the opera, Christine. At last, you and I are going to sing...
You are wrong, monsieur. I'm sorry, Christine. They are going to reopen the opera, but without you.
But Box 5 remained a problem.
Why is that box empty over there?
There have been complaints, Lord. Complaints. Voices. People do not like to sit there.
Are you trying to tell me it's haunted?
Director Terence Fisher, fresh from Hammer Films' triumphs, The Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula, was at the helm.
Like most films that he directed, he didn't have any say in choosing the subject. The studio had the idea to make the film. They said, "Would you like to direct this?" And he would say, "Sure." But it was a subject that appealed to him.
It also appealed to Cary Grant. The legend of masculine charisma approached Hammer, wanting to make a horror film. Under the pen name John Elder, producer Anthony Hines tailored his script to the star's romantic persona, only to have Grant's agent refuse his client's wish to play against type.
On the rat catcher, you see, sir.
Cary Grant could not go and stab the rat catcher in the eye. Hammer's script takes most of the menace away from the Phantom. It shifts murders from him to other people.
Traditional dirty tricks performed with relish by earlier Phantoms were now delegated to a malevolent imp. Topsy-turvy, the Phantom unmasks himself and is a victim of his character's own traditions. Czech-born, trained at London's Old Vic, Herbert Lom inherited the mask of a kinder, gentler Phantom. Lom gave a masterful performance, blending the tortured pantomime of Lon Chaney with the voice of the fallen angel pioneered by Claude Rains.
You're going to be a great and famous singer. I'll help you.
Who are you?
Be quiet and listen. You sang well, but you will sing better. I shall teach you. When you sing, it will be only for me. You are dining with Ambrose Darcy tonight. Be warned, he is a vile and vicious man.
The true villain of the story is Lord Ambrose Darcy, played by Michael Gough, who runs the opera house.
You're a delicious little thing.
Like Eric Claudin, Professor Petrie is an impoverished musician. This time, the theft is not imagined.
You thief! Scoundrel!
Penniless composers are invariably drawn to their publishers, where only tragedies are printed. The spiritual subtext of Gaston Leroux's tale was never more boldly enunciated, as this composer of divine music finds hell, not heaven, on earth.
What the devil?
Good evening, Lord Ambrose.
As death approaches, the fallen angel aspires to the firmament.
I'm dying already. But before I go, I implore you, allow me to finish one thing. Let me teach you Let me teach you to use that wonderful voice that God has given you.
Professor Petrie's masterwork chronicles the martyrdom of Joan of Arc, persecuted by church authorities because she claims to hear the voice of God.
And renounce these voices you hear, declare yourself a heretic.
Christine also hears a voice that warns her of evil.
There are forces of evil at large in the opera tonight. Leave the girl and go while you may.
A voice whose only desire is to present her a divine gift.
Sing! Use that wonderful gift that God has given you.
A voice that knows that martyrdom must precede sainthood.
You think you can become a great singer without suffering?
Heather Sears' tender performance was enhanced by soprano Pat Clark's accomplished dubbing.
Now, the melody. You begin very quietly.
Divinely inspired, Christine acknowledges her angel of music. She hears his voice. The Phantom of the Opera was one of Terence Fisher's most polished films. Films and Filming pronounced it the best thing Hammer had yet produced, but it was not well received at the box office.
He did a good job, but it wasn't a job that the public wanted.
In the years following Lon Chaney's original Phantom, Universal Monsters frequently spent a night at the opera. The Phantom stage has been in active use for the last 75 years. And few audiences realize how many other famous scenes have been shot in the very shadow of the chandelier.
You should have seen the blood.
How many thoroughly modern Phantoms have held a season pass to Box 5?
Raspberry! My God, it's muzzy.
But audiences give few raspberries to the Phantom. And this timeless fable of the fallen angel, told so many times, will continue to be retold. Through beauty's compassion, the beast will always. In addition to the 3 films released by Universal, The Phantom of the Opera has inspired many other dramatizations. The Andrew Lloyd Webber musical is the most celebrated, not to mention the most successful stage attraction in theater history. Given the story's incomparable track record, there will no doubt be more films and plays and musicals to come. No matter how you look at it, there's a Phantom in your future. For more information on The Phantom of the Opera, I hope you'll join me for a feature-length audio commentary, which you can access from the main menu. On behalf of the Opera Ghost, this is Scott McQueen.